אדיר הוא, יבנה ביתו בקרוב, במהרה בימינו בקרוב, אל בני ביתך בקרוב. God of might, God of right, we would bow before you, sing your praise in these days, celebrate your glory. When we hear, year by year, freedom's wondrous story. Adiru, yivne beito bekarov, bimhera beyameinu bekarov, el bnei ביתך בקרוב.
Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach. Welcome all of you to Central Synagogue, and we're so glad that you're joining us virtually. It's wonderful to be able to join together, not just for Chag Pesach, but also for Shabbat, and to enter into these holidays as a community. I'm Rabbi Ari Lorge, and I'm joined by my colleagues, by Cantor Dan Mutlu, and by Rabbi Sarah Berman. We want to extend our thanks to our incredible musicians and our AV team and our facilities team and our security team, all of whose work enables us to be here and to be able to join with you in these worship services. We are here in the midst of Pesach, and so on this Shabbat we are continuing to walk that road towards redemptive expansiveness and out of confinement. So even on a day that brought some more terrible news with turmoil and violence at our capital, with death of another Capitol Police officer and others wounded, even so we enter into this sacred time. We've been asked to keep these officers and their families in our prayers, and we will do so tonight. But especially on days like today, we can really lean on our tradition in this season where we lift up the symbols of rebirth and renewal. We're asked to turn away from brokenness and degradation and lean into hope. And that is what we need now more than ever. We need to be stewards of hope and beacons of hope to one another, and to find those little ways we can do that for one another. And this service provides us with yet another opportunity to help each other out in that way. Here at the outset of our service, I'm going to ask you to turn to the people around you and share some words of gratitude with them, or a highlight of the week with them. I'm going to ask you to pick up your phone, reach out to someone, tell them you're thinking of them. If you especially want to stretch yourself, maybe think of someone you haven't communicated with in some time, and reach out to them and tell them you're thinking of them. And if they ask why, you can just say, my rabbi told me to do it. It's a great excuse to begin a conversation again. But let's find ways we can continue to reach out and lift up hope for each other. We're going to do that tonight at the outset of this service by scattering more light around and kindling these lights of Shabbat. And for that, we have with us really wonderful members of our congregation. We have Barry and Cheryl Schwartz, who are going to help us kindle those lights. And we're so pleased to have you join us, especially on this holiday, as we can share some gratitude and thanks to you and for the generosity you extended that allowed us and our entire congregation to be able to adorn our Pesach Seders with that beautiful river runner and add some Hidur HaMitzvah, the beautification of a mitzvah. We are so grateful to you. And so we'll kindle these lights together and join in this sacred time.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kinishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We'll continue now with psalms to welcome Shabbat in this section of our liturgy called Kabbalat Shabbat. And we'll begin with a new song, Shiru Ladonai, Shir Chadash, page 13, or your order of service. Shiru Ladonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, La 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la la la. Shiru, Shiru Ladonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru. Sing a song, sing a new song to our God. Sing a song of joy and praise. Sing it out, oh, sing it loud. Ya la la, ya la la, la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la la la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya 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 la la la. Zamru Ladonai Bechinor on page 16. Zamru Ladonai Bechinor, Bechinor mekol zimra, b'chatzotzrot b'kol shofar. Hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai. Zamru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor mekol zimra, b'chatzotzrot b'kol shofar. Hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai. Yiram hayam umlo, tevel veyoshveva. Neharot yimcha uchaf yachad, harim yiraneinu. Yiram hayam umlo, tevel veyoshveva. We greet Shabbat now as if she were a bride with the words on page 20 in our Sidurim or on our order of service, Lecha Dodi. We greet the Shabbat bride with verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, rising on that last verse to welcome the bride, the essence of Shabbat, into our midst. Yalla la 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 lecha dodi, yalla la 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 likrat kala, yalla la 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 penei Shabbat, penei Shabbat nekabela, yalla la 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 lecha dodi, yalla la 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 likrat kala. Yalla la la la, penei Shabbat, nekabela. Shamu v'zachu b'dibur echad, ishmiyad el hamyuchad. Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, l'shem ultiferet v'lithilah. Yalla la la lecha dodi, yalla la la likrat kala, yalla la la penei Shabbat, penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat, lechu benei Elchad, ki bekol haberacha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila. Yalla la la lecha dodi, yalla la la likrat kala, yalla la penei Shabbat, penei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, ki ba'orech kumi uri, huri, shilda beiri, kibod Adonai, halayich nigla. Ateret bala, gam b'simcha uv'tzola, tochem monei hamsegula. Kala. Yalalalai b'nei Shabbat, b'nei Shabbat l'Kabela. Yalalalai l'Chagoni, yalalalai l'Kvat Kala. Yalalalai b'nei Shabbat, b'nei Shabbat l'Kabela. Yalalalai l'Chagoni, yalalalai l'Kvat Kala. Yalalalai b'nei Shabbat, b'nei Shabbat l'Kabela. We'll remain standing for our call to worship. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Yalalalai, 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 yalalalai. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Good. I invite you to once again take your seat. This week of Passover, everything we do is tinged with freedom. And we don't have to wait until our daily prayer of freedom, Michamocha, to acknowledge this. We reclined at our seders because we are free people. Some of us may still be reclining on couches or armchairs as we eat dinner. The burgeoning green around us signals freedom from winter's grip. And I'd argue that every piece of matzah pizza celebrates our freedom to maintain our traditions in new ways. Even the night, the darkness, which God created for us just as much as God created the light and the day, even the night can be a source of freedom. As Adrienne Rich wrote in her poem, For Memory, freedom, it isn't once to walk out under the Milky Way, feeling the rivers of light, the fields of dark. Freedom is daily, prose-bound, routine remembering, putting together inch by inch the starry worlds from all the lost collections. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. We continue together in the Hebrew on page 148. Please join me. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael amcha ahavta, Torah umitzvot, chukim umishpatim otano limadata. Al kain Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochbeinu uvkumenu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha leolam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu v'orech yamenu, uvehem negeh yomam v'layla, v'ahavatecha al tasir mimenu leolamim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadevarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta b'ham בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. On page 152, our song of freedom. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Mi chamoch ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osefele, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Malchutecha ra'u banecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam ze'eli anu ve'amneru Adonai yimloch לעולם ועד. יא לה לה לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו Amidah Malkeinu L'chaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom Hamidenu Malkeinu L'chaim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom Hamidenu Malkeinu L'chaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, from sorrow and pain. Hashkivenu L'shalom Hamidenu Malkeinu L'chaim.
This past week, we were not the only ones whose thoughts turned to Egypt. With a ship run aground in the Suez Canal, all the world turned in that direction. It was a powerful reminder that as much as we try to control in this world, we cannot master the waters. Water can destroy, but it can also bring life, and it can comfort. It can clean, and it can renew. Knowing of our powerlessness over water, all winter we pray to God in our daily tefillah, in our Amidah prayer, that God grant us both wind and rain to wash the earth clean. And then, in the spring, we turn our prayers so that God will morid hatal, grant us dew to renew all life. This week, tonight, we begin our prayers for dew together, because we cannot control the water, but we can pray for it not to harm, for it to heal. We turn to page 155 in our Siddur and rise, if we are able, for the Amidah, for the Tefillah.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ופי יגיד תהילתך. Oh, Adonai, open my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Oh, Adonai, open my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai, sifatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, sifatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Ma'advarav, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומשיח ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם, בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים, אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן נתן החיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. We take a few moments now in silent prayer, either standing or seated, as is your custom. לרצון אמרי פי, יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, ויגון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Oh, may the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable before you, O God, my rock and my Redeemer. O say shalom bimromav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru.
For too many of us, our days are shaped into forms not of our choosing. Illness, pain, isolation, and distress are strong forces that we are often unable to overcome on our own. Today, violence in our nation's capital again ripped us in our guts, leaving one Capitol police officer dead and 2 injured. The gift of community, whether it is a neighborhood, a synagogue, a city, a state, or a very nation. The gift of community is that we don't have to face these things alone. This central community comes together as one every Shabbat in support of those who seek healing, comfort, and connection. We offer our united prayers for the healing of body and mind and spirit for those you carry in your own hearts, as well as those individuals who have been made known to us. We think of the 2 Capitol police officers injured today, as well as Leibish Abba, Kathy Barron, Eileen Berger, Donald Brief, Jerry Calderon, Lou Chen, Erwin Diamond, Alexandra Duran, Marcia Firestone, Corey Flaum, Jerry Friedman, Janie Furse, Ashley Goodman, Alex Hochberg, Howard Hochberg, Anna Kaufman, Marjorie Lentz, Roy Lipman, Erwin Merkatz, Carrie Miller, Tracy Johnson Mulroy, Brigida Perez Prado, Sharon Resnick, Carol Roman, Leslie Rosenberg, Sandy Schupper, Bill Smith, Alan Wolf, and Pam Young. May these people, in addition to those that you have named and who you carry in your heart, be granted healing, comfort, and connection as we join together in our prayer for healing, Misha Berach.
Misha Berach, Avotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, veLeah, Hu yevarech veyirapeh et hacholim. Misha Berach, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, שרה, רבקה, רחל ולאה, הוא יברך וירפא את החולים.
Just as in the hard times, we also come together as a community every week to celebrate the good things. And there are so many good things to acknowledge this week. In the spirit of Passover and its refrain, Dayenu, it would have been enough for us. Let's join in rising, if we are able, and saying Dayenu for each great thing, until we are all risen as one community celebrating together. If you welcome Morid Hatal, that confirmation that spring has come, Dayenu. If you celebrate that international trade has jump-started with the freeing of the ship in the Suez, Dayenu. If you got to celebrate Passover with us and our central community in our virtual but very real Passover Seder last Saturday night, Dayenu. If you're grateful that, as wonderful and joyous as Passover is, that we only have 1 or 2 days more of matzah, depending on how many days you observe, Dayenu. If you rejoice with me that on Tuesday, any New Yorker over age 16 who wants a COVID vaccine will be eligible, recognizing that accessibility will remain an issue, and it's up to us to help our friends and neighbors and fellow New Yorkers however we can. Dayenu. If you haven't yet risen in body or spirit, but are glad simply to have reached Shabbat, a day of rest and joy and connection, and are glad to be connected to us and to each other this Shabbat, please rise in body or spirit, join us in saying Dayenu, and join us in singing our prayer of thanksgiving, Shehechianu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kimanu v'higiyanu b'zman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kimanu בזמן הזה.
You may be seated. This Shabbat, we chant a special Torah reading because we are here on the 7th day of Pesach. And so we wind the scroll back and have something of a rerun as we recount the song the Israelites sang as they walked through the sea and found their freedom. And what could be a more appropriate Torah portion, since this holiday is, after all, designated by our tradition as Zeman Cherotenu, the time of our freedom. But what is the freedom that we're celebrating on this holiday of Pesach? What exactly does Judaism mean when it uses the word freedom? After all, it's a word that's been bandied about quite a bit recently. The word itself sags under the weight of ideologies and biases and bombast. The concept of freedom has been used simultaneously to defend opposing sides of debates, and hellish tyrannies themselves have been built on the backs of claims of freedom. So we have to be very careful when we use this word. So what is the freedom that Judaism imagines as our goal. I want to let you in on a not too well-kept secret, but it's kept well enough. Despite what you've probably been taught, Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt, our central Jewish narrative, begins in slavery, but ends in slavery as well. I know that's hard to believe. You're probably wondering how that's the case. Well, we can look to Torah. At the very close of Devarim, at the very end of Deuteronomy, one of the last descriptions we find of Moses, of Moshe, our great liberator, is as an Eved, as a slave. We read there at the end of the Torah, Vayamot Sham Moshe, Eved Adonai, Be'eretz Moav al pi Adonai. There he died, at the command of God in the land of Moab, Moses, a slave of God. Now we can make that translation prettier and say that Moses was a servant of God, but that word Eved is the very same word that is used to describe our slavery in Egypt. And so we learn that Moses is born into an imposed slavery, but then dies a slave by choice. And we learn from this, or we can assume from this, that being an Eved Adonai, being a slave of God, is the highest aspiration of all Jews. If that's Moses' final epitaph, surely we should strive for the same thing. And so our journey to freedom goes from Eved LeFaro to Eved Adonai, from a slave to Pharaoh to a slave for God. So does this mean that we aren't free? In a limited sense, yes. We are not meant to be free like Pharaoh was free. We're not to seek out the freedom to act on our every whim and wish. Pharaoh could enrich himself while impoverishing thousands. He could snuff out souls as easily as candle flames. He could follow his lust and his greed and his thirst for power, and who would stand in his way? So if freedom means our ability to act without impediment or hindrance, then Pharaoh is the very definition of freedom. And yet, he is the antithesis of how Judaism defines the word. I shall do as I please is not the freedom of an Eved Adonai, of a slave for God. We are not on earth to serve ourselves and become slaves to our desires and our pleasures. And we are also not meant to be free in the same way the Sarim Misim, the taskmasters in Egypt, were free. Those taskmasters who were given just enough power and wealth that it seemed attractive to ignore the crimes upon which their security was built. They were fed, they were housed, they were happy, and therefore what worry was it to them if human bodies became chattel? If freedom means being free from guilt or free from responsibility or free from self-examination, well, then the Egyptian taskmasters were paradigms of freedom. And yet they are also the antithesis of how Judaism defines the word. The carefree stance that says, as long as I hold the whip, what does it matter who is on the other side, is not the freedom of an Eved Adonai. We are not on earth to slave after the false gods of money and selfishness and power. So what then is the freedom that we are celebrating on this holiday? If it isn't the freedom to act as we desire, if it isn't the freedom to serve ourselves, if it isn't the freedom to pursue our own happiness, what does it mean that this week is Zaman Cherutenu, the time of our freedom? Well, I have a clue, so I thought we would play a very short game. This is harder to do without you all here in the congregation, but if you are near a comment button, this is your moment. And I'm going to have to rely on my colleagues here, and I think it's just the general rule, whoever can chime in first wins, and there's great prizes. There's a small jar of marmalade, actually. So complete the phrase if you would. When Moses was in Egypt land.
Let
my people go.
Very good. I'm not sure who I am going to give that marmalade to. But let my people go. Let my people go. That is the refrain of Pesach. That is the refrain of our Exodus story. But we often forget that's just the beginning of a phrase. We have to follow that phrase to its completion. God states over and over again in the Torah, Shlach ami v'ya'avduni. Let my people go, that they may serve me, that they may slave for me. The Jewish concept of freedom is about being free so that we can slave after God's dream. You see, once, ages ago, God gazed upon a world newly formed, and God called it good. Who today could look out at the world and say the same? As we pollute the air and water, as we let children starve and pauperize the sick should they deign to seek treatment, as we distribute instruments of war more readily than voting rights, and as new pharaohs pop up to exploit the poor and enrich themselves, as refugees fleeing conflict and famine in modern exoduses only find impassable borders rather than split seas, who could believe that God once beheld humanity and deigned call us very good? And yet God did. And so we must be capable of that goodness. The task of an Eved Adonai, of a slave for God, is to believe in that vision for our world and for ourselves and to make it real. And our task is not only to realize it, but to inspire others to join us in the work. We are free so that we can serve, so that we can slave after a world that we can call good once again. But it begins by being of service, by tending to the community and the world around us, by assisting each other. Freed from slavery to Pharaoh, we began, as Jews, a mutual enslavement of our own choosing. We decide to be bound by the bonds of responsibility and restricted by righteousness and confined by compassion and indentured to empathy. We decide, we opt to be enslaved by God's dream. And until we realize that dream, we choose to remain ensnared to its awesome promise. And that is why it is true each and every year when we recite in the Haggadah, Hashta Avde L'Shana Habana L'Shana Haba'a B'nei Chorin. Now we are slaves, and we pray next year we will be free. Now we are slaves because we are slaves for God. But if we work hard enough, if we feed the poor, if we break open the jailer's door, if we welcome in the stranger, if we heal and bind up the wounds of the sick, if we administer justice equitably and fairly, if we extend our hands to the lonely and banish hate from our hearts, if we learn to serve one another and not ourselves, then our servitude will be at an end. But until that day, we are called, like Moshe, like Moses, to be Avdei Adonai, slaves for God, toiling away for sacred purpose. And so, after this holiday ends, we will go back to work.
Service continues. the bottom of page 282, Aleinu L'Shabeach, will ask you to rise once more. Aleinu L'Shabeach Ladon HaKol, Latet Gedula Leotze Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kegoye Haratzot, Velo Samanu Kemishpechot Ha'adama, Shelo Sam Chelkeinu Kahem, Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamona, V'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'ne'emar v'chaya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hamu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo Ve'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah.
We have come to our moment of memory and turn to those whose lives have ended, but who live on in and through us. Marking the first yahrzeit, the first anniversary of the death of a loved one, we have some special guests who you've just seen joining us remotely to light the yahrzeit flame. We are honored to be joined by the family of Edith Nathanson, mother of Carola Hoffman, the family of Edward Gardner, the father of Alex Gardner, the family of Matilda Lipton, mother of Mark Lipton, and the family of Barry Cohen, the father of Ian Cohen. And if you haven't already, I invite all four families to light your yahrzeit candle now. Along with your loved ones, tonight Central Synagogue remembers. We usually name names of any members of our armed services who have died in the past week. And while there are no names from that list to share, thank goodness, we do remember the one Capitol police officer who was killed in an attack today. We also remember those whose lives were lost to mass shooting violence in our country. Among the 15 victims this week are unnamed men and women from Memphis, Tennessee, Chicago, Illinois, Essex, Maryland, Orange, California, and Washington, D.C., the youngest of whom was 9 years old. In recent days, in the past week or the past month, our Central Synagogue community marks the passing of Theodore Cohn, father of Karen, Don, and Jordan, and the brother of Amy Liss. Gerald Fengel, father of Cheryl, Brian, and Elisa. Harav Meir Isur ben Shlomo V'chaya Halevi, the brother of Alan Middleman. Arlene Katisker Westreich, mother of Neil and Marjorie. Renee Weiss, mother of Deborah Weiner, Jeffrey, and Cheryl. And Barry Wolin, father of Amanda Moskowitz. If you lost a loved one in the past week and are observing a period of Shiva, I will invite you to rise in body or in spirit. And if you are marking the period of Shloshim, the first month since the death of a loved one, please rise in body or spirit. And if you are in the first year after the death of a loved one, the period of Shana, please rise in body or spirit. Our community also remembers those who did not die recently but died at this time in years past. So if you have lost a loved one at this time in years past, if you're marking a yahrzeit, I invite you to rise at this time if you are able, as I read the names of those our community lost. Daniel Abramson, Sonia Adler, Rosa Aminov, Charlotte Ballinger, Lydia Barenboim, Saul Bass, Heshi Beard, Samuel Bellsberg, Barbara Berger, Annette Berlin, Ina Canjano, Albert Chadsey, Saul Chaikin, Herbert Chavkin, Eleanor Klott, Nancy Klott, Barbara Cohen, Barry Cohen, George Cohen, Rose Cohen, Ira Constad, Arnold Cotton, Lucille Cotton, Stanley Diamond, Robert Edwards, Milton Ehrlich, Jacques Essebag, Shirley Finkelstein, Estelle Fishman, Harry Fromkin, Edward Gardner, Benjamin Gingold, Gerard Glass, Nicholas Gluckin, Gersten Golden, Alvin Goodman, Perroy Grossfeld, Harriet Halprin, Andrew Heitner, Herbert Heller, Mildred Heller, Roger Hershey, Seymour Isaacman, Joy Klein, Berta Klestadt, Matilda Kogan, Heidi Kravis-Ruger, Bernice Kruger, Harold Kulla, Samuel Lehman, Edward Levy, Matilda Lipton, Carmen Lorch, Roger Madoff, William Meyer, Harry Marvin, Jean Migdon, Harry Miller, Isidore Mintz, Edith Nathanson, Bradley Nitkin, Michael Parness, Geula Pedatzor, Daniel Press, Milton Protas, Edward Reich, Rose Roth, Edward Ruckel, Louis Schenkel, Suzanne Sheps, Bruce Schlechter, Benjamin Schmelkin, Ben Schnitzer, Sarah Schulman, Norman Siegel, Hi Smilo, Estelle Taylor, Martin Tepper, Jacob Thomas, Rachel Tobias, Betty Tuft, Toby Weiner, Jarrett Weisvogel, Harold Wolfson, Ruth Younger, and Simeon Zelikoff. We rise as one body, or in body or spirit, as one community. And I invite you to share aloud or in one of our chat boxes the name of any loved one you are thinking of as we join together in our Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon, v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudusha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush v'chata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Ve'imeru amen. Ve'imeru amen. Ve'imeru amen. Ve'imeru amen.
Lauren, Magnus, we are delighted to have you joining us to give us our announcements this evening. Lauren, what can you tell us?
Shabbat Shalom. My name is Lauren Magnus, and I am a student in this year's confirmation class at Central Synagogue. We are happy so many of you are joining us virtually and hope you will join us for further Shabbat services. As always, you can join us through our live stream, Facebook Live, YouTube channel, and JBS. Tomorrow morning, we will hold our 7th-day Passover Yizkor service at 9:30 a.m. This service will be live streamed on our website or Facebook page and JBS. To learn more about upcoming programming, please visit our website. Information about Shabbat morning worship can be found on our website as well. Please join us in the Kiddush, which can be found on page 5 of your prayer books.
Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidishanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'bratzon hinchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh, zecher yetziat Mitzrayim. Kivanu v'achata ve'otanu kidashta mikol amim ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava u'v'ratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. We turn to our matzah.
Well, Cantor Mutlu, I want you to get very excited along with me. Our matzah is underneath a cover that says matzah. It's the
great.
only time of year we can use this.
I just end up using my challah cover for the matzah cover. That's pretty special right there.
I know, but here we go. We have matzah and everything.
It's labeled.
It has a name tag. Very helpful.
Let's bless it.
Let's.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. We will conclude with a song that we sing at the end of our Passover Seders, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Next year, may we all be free. Next year, may we all be in Jerusalem. L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. L'Shana Haba'a, L'Shana Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.